Welcome in to Locked On Knicks. It's a yearly tradition. We're going to draft which teams in the NBA will be the best over the next 5 years. We call it the NBA Futures Draft, and we're getting into it right now on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is sponsored by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks your first listen today and every day. Whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube, we appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit the auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode, especially because we're back on 5 or possibly more podcasts per week for you guys, keeping the content churning as we get close to the regular season. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief at Knicks site, The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he is Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And Gavin, today we're joined by your favorite former podcast companion, hopefully not favorite of all time, considering our long-standing marriage here. But either way, we're bringing your ex on today. We got Marcus Barahal, former host of the Locked On Nets podcast, do a yearly tradition where we're going to draft all of the teams in the NBA based off who we think has the best future going forward for the next 5 years. So we're banking it, we're making it, because the NBA, you can't project 10 years out or anything like that. It's just too fast flowing of a league. We settle on 5 years as our measure to say, which team are you most willing to bet on for the next 5 years to potentially win a championship, win multiple championships, be really good for the next 5 years and consistently contend. And I think our Knicks fan faithful will be very happy with how this ultimately goes very early on. And then it goes from there. This is going to be a 2-part episode, so make sure to keep an eye out for tomorrow as well when we drop part 2. But for now, let's get into the top part of the draft. It's now time to draft the best NBA teams for the next 5 years. We're calling this the Futures Draft, where we decide to check in on what teams should have the best and most malleable and potentially most successful futures for the next 5 years. And we're going to do it a snake draft style. So this should be pretty fun. Sort of like a fantasy football draft where we're going to go 1, 2, 3, and then 3, 2, 1, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 3, 2, 1 over and over again until we get through all 30 teams in the NBA. And we each have our own team of teams. I don't really know what that is, but maybe we compare notes at the end and decide who did a better job, or just leave it up to all of you to comment on YouTube. YouTube poll will be helpful, or maybe just a Twitter poll or whatever. We'll figure something out. At any rate, as promised, we are joined by the former host of Locked On Nets, along with Gavin. Back in the day, back in the times when Gavin transferred over to Locked On Knicks, everyone accused him of being a fake fan for a really long time because he previously hosted Locked On Nets. Marcus Barahal. Marcus, how you doing, bud? It's great to see you back here for another iteration of this exercise.
I'm doing great, Alex. Good to see you. I'm happy to just sort of pop in every couple of years to remind people about Gavin's past, just sort of haunt him in the distance. So thanks for having me on.
The ghost of podcast past, here to shake his chains and scare Gavin again. So I wanted to do this live so that if I get first pick, everybody could accuse me of cheating, because nobody can actually see what's happening right now. But I did create a random order generator here to see who gets first pick, second pick, and third pick. I've got our 3 names written down. I'm going to hit the button now. Nobody can see it, but you're just going to have to trust me. Trust that I'm a trustworthy guy. Let's see how it goes. Oh, see, this works out great. This makes it look like we're treating our guest awesome, Gavin. Marcus gets pick number 1. I get pick number 2, and Gavin, you get the turn. So really, I kind of screwed myself. I got the worst possible pick because I don't get the first pick or the turn. So
yeah, really.
Congrats,
that first
Marcus.
Pick, I think that first pick,
we can give it to auction style if you need. So
we don't have that kind of time. All right, Marcus. I think I know who you're going to take, but who do you have number 1?
That makes me nervous now because I wasn't sure, but I'll lock in this answer. They haven't really done anything too noteworthy as of yet. but I'm going to have to go with the Oklahoma City Thunder to start.
That was my number one. Yeah.
Bummer. Yeah, I mean, they're obviously very good. They made second round last year. Adding Caruso, adding, as you guys know, Isaiah Hartenstein.
Got it right first time.
We'll go with that. It just adds more depth to the team that still has a ton of draft picks that can still cash those in really at any point if they want to upgrade at any of those sort of wing positions around Shea, around Chet. They're just like the perfect balance of great right now, extremely young, and also a ton of assets to trade. So that's who I've got to go with the first pick here.
Yeah, I think that's why I had the number one on my board too. It's mostly just they're so good now. They were already the number one seed last year, and then they got better significantly, and they also just essentially have a blank check that they can fill out whenever they want with all these future draft picks and everything, and tons of young assets. And they have Nikola Topic, who they just drafted, who is maybe not even going to play this year, but could potentially turn into the ultimate steal of this past year's draft. Just they got everything going right for them. It pains me to see them go off the board first. I was hoping maybe you would have forgotten about them somehow, but it's pretty hard to forget about.
Yeah, not that many teams. So
we gave you almost no time to prep, trying to make you forget about them. But good on you, still figuring it out. Alex, I like the position you're in now, because either you have to take the Knicks or you have to be the bad guy. So I'm curious which way you're going to go on that.
Oh, I'm taking the Knicks. Period.
Oh,
yeah,
perfect.
I mean, look, I'm nothing if not a homer.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm taking the Knicks. That's my number 2 overall pick. So I feel good about it too. It's not. I don't even think it's a homer pick. I think it's just. I look at the Knicks and I look at the Celtics, and I think they're going to contend with each other at the top of the East for the next couple years at minimum. But that couple years part, I think, is key to this. I think at some point the Celtics are going to have to blow this up in some tangible way because of the money and the new apron system. They don't want to put themselves in a situation where they are over that second apron twice in a row, and then three times in a row, and then have to, have their draft pick X number of years down the line automatically become the last pick in the first round. There's all these different penalties, tons of money, everything else. I think they've got maybe 2 more runs in them. I think they're over the second apron this year with all the extensions that are kicking in and everything.
They have a 2-year window basically with this.
Yeah, they basically have 2 more years at it, but this is a 5-year out projection. Sam Quinn of CBS recently did a really good breakdown on Twitter of why the Knicks are actually positioned with this main core, their top 7 guys or so. They're positioned to, if they want to, keep this whole core together for 4 years without hitting the second apron, 2 years without hitting the second apron, and then that 2-year window to play at the second apron or above after they extend a couple guys and all that. So I feel pretty good about it. I think that they also have a good bailout plan in the fact that they're trying this out with Cat, but he is an enormous salary, which gives them the ability to potentially do sort of what Minnesota just did with them and make a deal somewhere down the line to try to change things up if they want to, which before the Cat trade felt a little less feasible because they had too many good contracts that were not big enough to make a big trade anymore when they're in this apron zone. So they're a little low on draft picks now, but I feel pretty good about their ability to still get better down the line. And I think they're going to be really good right now and a little more sustainable than the Celtics. So maybe the Knicks window isn't this year. Maybe it's not even next year, but I think sometime in the next 5 years, fingers crossed, toes crossed, everything, they might have a chance to win a championship.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty clear big drop off after Oklahoma City. There's just not a combination of a team. Like you talked about how good they were last year. They added 2 of the top maybe 10 defensive players in the league by some metrics, and guys who are above average on offense. 1 million picks coming. I think number 1 was so valuable here because 2 is a really tricky spot. And I had, unfortunately, the Boston Celtics as my number 2 team. So that's who I'm going to take at the turn here. And to me, it's because I think they have a fantastic chance to go, I'll say to win the title this year. And I think they have a very, very good chance 2 years from now. And I've made the argument on this podcast a couple of different times. I think it is a major upset if there's not a significant injury and the Celtics don't win again. They had, I think, the 4th best net rating in NBA history last year. everyone's back. Everyone other than Drew Holiday should be as good, if not like maybe even a little bit better than they were last year. Like all those guys are just smack dab in the middle of their prime. A really good bench, if not quite like the bench the Knicks had before making the Cat trade. So obviously it's not ideal that they have to break things up for the final 3 years of this, but if you still have a Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and like one of Derek White or Kristaps Porzingis core with like good depth and like clearly fantastic management and a lunatic as a coach, but a pretty effective coach, I think that's a pretty good formula to win maybe 2 championships in these next 5 years. So I think after Oklahoma City, Boston was pretty clearly my next team, but I hear your case for the Knicks, Alex, and that like the window with the core is twice as long. But Marcus, I don't know, who would you have taken at 2 between those two teams?
We're looking at the next 5 years, you said?
Yeah, 5 years.
I think I might take the Knicks. I mean, I think if it was just the next 3, I would lean Boston. But just like you guys talked about, the financial ramifications of the roster that the Celtics have assembled. And then just add on top, like the Knicks sort of have some momentum right now, like not just on the court, but off it, like with guys wanting to come here, the Towns trade, the Bridges trade, like whether or not both of those guys were demanding trades to the Knicks. It seems like Bridges maybe more so than Cat was, but it seems like the Knicks are like picking up steam and like becoming sort of what they weren't for the past, 20 plus years, which is like a franchise that like guys want to come to. So that gives me faith that like, even if this specific core doesn't work out for whatever reason, like they'll be able to turn things around. Whereas the Celtics, like I know they've been great for about like the last 10 years or so, like in the post KG, post Paul Pierce era. But they had like that long stretch in the 90s and into the beginning of the 2000s where they just like weren't really able to field a competitive team. And I think that that's maybe less of a risk now with the Knicks, which is kind of crazy to say, just thinking back to the mid 2000s, to the early 2010s, how far this franchise has come. So I would, I think, side with Alex, but I'm not the Knicks fan here, or am I? I don't know.
Well, yeah, I don't know. I just think Tatum and Brown are going to be like all NBA caliber players for the next 5 years. But you know what? Unless he forgets how to shoot, which seems like it might happen. First, we want to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. But now get this, you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So I led you astray on Thursday Night Football last week. You should not have listened to me. You should have listened to me on Sunday morning. I did not know the game was in London for my prediction of Vikings minus 2.5 against the Jets. Again, I'm sorry, Alex, came to fruition. So you should trust me now because I'm kind of on a winning streak. I like another Sunday morning game. Jacksonville, Chicago. I am taking the Bears. I think Caleb Williams, DJ Moore, they found something with that passing game. DeAndre Swift, all of a sudden just cooking at the running back position after he was struggling for a while coming over that team. Defense has been sick all year. I know Jacksonville finally put some points on the board. Brian Thomas Jr. is a freak of nature, but I just don't buy into the team at all. That defense is a sieve. I genuinely think Chicago's pretty good. So if I was going to do something with my $5, I would put it there. But again, you get $200 in bonus bets either way when you head over to FanDuel.com. All right, around the bend here. This is why I did not want this pick. Is for 4. There are 5 teams that I would like. I think you could equally make a case for. I don't want to list all of them to give you guys any ideas, but like I'll screw it. I'll do it because I don't pick for a while. So I have Dallas, Minnesota, Denver, Philadelphia, San Antonio. You could talk me into just like the sheer upside of Wemby. The Sixers, I like that they have that Clippers pick. I think they might have the best team now. Denver has Jokic, who's the best player right now. Dallas is Luka, who's the best player long-term. Minnesota is the deepest. I am rolling with Dallas and Luka just because I think after Wemby, he is the player like by a pretty substantial margin. Maybe you could make a case for Jokic and Anthony Edwards that you would want for the next 5 years, even though they have some picks out the window. I actually really like their current team. I don't really know if there's a team out west that just like has any type of answer for Luka. Boston made them look pretty like far away in the finals, which is kind of my one bit of hesitation, but I think they've insulated him really well with 3-and-D guys. surprise, surprise, I'm a fan of them getting Quentin Grimes. Kyrie will not be great for the next 5 years, but I think he has another really good 3. How they replace him is sort of the biggest question because there isn't a clear-cut second star. So in that sense, I'm reaching a little bit. This pick is really all about faith in Luka. But Alex, you want to tell me why that might be dumb? As I know you've been a little bit of a Dallas hater over the years.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I just don't. I did not have that high. I think I just don't quite have faith in their ability to build a winner at this point. I know, which sounds stupid considering they just made a finals appearance, technically speaking, but I don't know. It's just I don't think it's gonna last. I feel like it felt very similar to me last year's run with Dallas to Atlanta's run to the ECF. Or whatever, when they beat the Knicks in the first round. I don't know that I believe in this team long term. And that's not to say I don't believe in Luka long term, but I just don't know if they've got the chops to build a really good winning team around him. Now, maybe I'll eat my words and maybe Klay Thompson will regain some of his former glory and that whole new big 3 that they got going there, and the Quentin Grimes reclamation will work out and all that stuff, and I'll look like a big idiot. But I guess I don't totally buy it until I see it, which maybe is, I don't know, maybe this is just me being stupid in this case because it's not like the team I'm about to pick has necessarily proved more, but I just like them more. I just dislike the Mavericks too. That plays into this. I'm sorry. I just don't like them. So I'm going to go with the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's the team that I wanted. And that's the team that I had 4th. So I'm happy to get them at 5th. I like Anthony Edwards a lot. I like the trade that they just made. I think that they did a really good job of adding 2 valuable contracts in, the fact that they have Julius Randle and then have the inside track to re-signing him, a guy who, we mentioned a bunch of times from the Knicks perspective is willing to take a little less money if it means fielding a winning team. And he's actually done that in his career. So it's not like that's an unprecedented statement. And then, getting Dante DiVincenzo, getting that first round pick to recoup a little bit what they had to give up in the Gobert trade, which is probably the main thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause with them. The ability to get better, I don't know, is the strongest of all these teams, but another team that was contending for the first spot in the West last year. I think that I don't know that they necessarily got better, but they certainly didn't get any worse this offseason. But you get to give Naz Reid more of a runway to get better now with Cat not there and to take a bigger role. Obviously you have Randall on the team now, and I think he'll be really good. I think he'll fit pretty well with this core. DiVincenzo fits with any team. So maybe they did get better, maybe just, I don't want to call it addition by subtraction in terms of Cat, but in terms of the opportunities that it gives Naz Reid, plus getting a DiVincenzo, plus also still having Julius Randle. I think they did pretty well for themselves, all things considered. So yeah, I'm all in on the Timberwolves. But Marcus, how do you feel? Did I steal any food out of your mouth, or was the team that you were looking for still here?
I've got a full plate still. To be honest, I think I agree with what you said, Alex, about the Wolves. I don't think that you can really say they got better or worse. I think it's just that they got different, which I don't know that they really needed to do after 1 year. I think the fact that they got past the Nuggets and then fell to the Mavericks, like we kind of talked about when Gavin was talking about the Mavs, I don't know that that's going to be super replicable. And I think that it's possible that they didn't need to change that much to have to worry about the Mavs. I think the Mavs might end up taking care of themselves this coming season. And so I don't know, the Wolves might have threw off a good thing, but I was not going to pick them. So I've got 2 picks here, and I think I'm going to take the teams that are led by probably the 2 best players in the NBA. I'm going to take the Nuggets and I'm going to take the Bucks. I think the Nuggets is probably a little easier of a pick. Obviously, they just won the title 2 years ago. Jokic still the best player in the league, reigning MVP. Showed in the Olympics that he could kind of almost, not single-handedly, because there were some nice contributions up and down that roster of names I won't try to pronounce right now, but he showed that he could almost single-handedly take down some of the top talent in the league. I know they've got some difficulties with cap stuff coming up. Murray's kind of looked a little bit off. Porter has always been a guy that I don't love. And it seems like he doesn't have a ton of trade value, so they might just have to kind of keep him and just sort of hope that he maybe develops a little bit more defensively. and can do a little bit more off ball. But it's just hard to pick against Jokic, and especially like once we're outside of the top 5 teams, like I think it's a great bet to just bet on him. And then with the Bucks, I understand that they disappointed last year. Damian Lillard looked kind of washed. Chris Middleton hasn't really been healthy in a couple of years. Brook Lopez is getting older. They don't have Drew Holiday anymore, but they do have Giannis still. And as much as there's like always rumors that he might leave if things don't go well, I kind of see him as a guy that's just like happy to be there. He won a title there. Like he's built a family there. It's the only team he's known. He's been there for over a decade at this point since he got drafted in 2013. This is, I guess, just a bet on him staying with the Bucks. And as my third team here, I think that's an okay bet. And I do think that they can be better this year than last year, full off season with Doc Rivers, for better or worse. Dame having, some time to rest, maybe heal up his abdomen, get back in the studio, do what he does best on and off the court. So yeah, I think the Bucks have the best championship upside, maybe other than Philly, of the teams that are left on the board at this point. So that's why I'm going with them.
Yeah, I can't argue with the Minnesota or Denver picks. I had them 5 and 6. I had Milwaukee, probably too low, all the way down at 14. And like I think that was probably a little harsh, just because they like undeniably like just have more of a championship window the next 2 years than like pretty much, to your point, other than the Sixers, like any other team. Like I just think like the 3 years after that, like it's going to be really hard for them to retool on the fly. Like maybe if like some of those guys but Dame is just making so much, and like Middleton, Lopez, I guess only has like a year or so left. So maybe I'm underrating it. They just don't have like a lot of picks or a lot of maneuverability. I think they probably should have been more around 10 for me. But Alex, I have 2 teams sitting at 7 and 8. I'm really excited about both. I'm happy to end up with either. I assume you're going to steal one of them here, but I'm curious which one, or maybe you won't take either. Where are you leaning right now?
Yeah, I'll also just say I had the Bucks at 13. I was also low on them, and I think it's just mostly, they have the highest probability, I think, of making me look foolish, because I think that when you're talking about the top of this list, if you win one championship in the next 5 years, no matter what, you made someone look like an idiot, like if they didn't pick you early, because all you need is one. Yeah. And that's something in the NBA. Like there's only a finite number of teams that have even won a championship, in this league, and it's very top heavy. So, I think, and the Bucks are one of them. And, just a couple years ago with much of the same core minus Damian Lillard, who's a really good player. So maybe I'm too low there, but today's episode is brought to you by Gametime, and Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And let me tell you, I've spent a lot of time in the last few days combing through thousands of tickets because I want to go see the Mets in the playoffs, but it's freaking expensive and I'm tired of it. I don't know why Steve Cohen needs so much of my hard-earned podcast salary. But either way, I've been using Gametime because I looked at, I'm not even cutting an ad promo right now. Like I literally looked at every other ticketing app, and Gametime is the only one that is making this somewhat feasible for me. So if you need an endorsement, that's it. And one of the best things is that they offer you all-in pricing. It's my absolute favorite feature. So I don't click on a ticket and say, wow, a ticket for $150. And then you go to check out and it's like, oh, by the way, here's $75 in fees on each one of those tickets. So it's actually going to be $500 for $250 alleged tickets. So Gametime is great. You want to talk about cutting out all the fluff, cutting out all the BS. It's the app to go to. And if I end up going to game 3 tonight or game 4 tomorrow, it's going to be because Gametime got me there. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? It's Gametime. I started eyeing up the future maybe a little too much with my next pick, and maybe this is me being a starry-eyed fool, but I'm taking the Spurs with my next pick. I believe in Wemby. I think that we're already to a light degree starting to see the effect of the magnetism that he is going to have as a player. Like, I know that Chris Paul isn't the free agent that he was years ago anymore, but he's a guy that probably had options this offseason and chose to sign with San Antonio. And I know that, it's probably just going to be him throwing lobs to Wemby all year, but I think it's going to lay out a pretty good blueprint for, potential free agents, potential guys that could be available in trade, that might have their choice of where they want to go, that might say, hey, I mean, if Chris Paul at like 39 years old or however old he is can still do that with Victor Wembanyama and look that good, then maybe I want to go there too. And I think there's going to be a magnetism to the Wemby experience, and they have a lot of flexibility, obviously financially, while he's on his rookie deal, which is huge right now. They have very tradable pieces, I think, on their team if they decide to go all in at some point. Like Vassell is a really good player on a pretty affordable deal. You have Keldon Johnson similarly on like a decent enough chunk of salary that you could trade him, but not making like an absurd amount of money, like so you could include him as part of a deal if you're trying to acquire someone. I think drafted pretty well. Like Stephon Castle was a pretty big shot to take, but if he works out, I think that things could change for them on a dime, like if he really develops well and gets better. So I really like where they're at. Right, they also have Harrison Barnes apparently, which I'm not gonna lie, I did not realize he ended up on their team this year. So they have him making $18 million, which again, very tradable.
Yeah.
I just think they have a lot of avenues to get better, and it's the rare small market team that I think has aura, like that people would look at and be like, they have the next big thing on this team, and this is a team with a ton of history behind it that has won a lot of championships, and I might want to go be part of that. So I'm kind of banking on that, and then potentially by Wemby's like year 3 or 4, being able to make potentially a Western Conference Finals run or something, or maybe even more than that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world where Wemby's just so transformative that, like, to your point, like maybe not this year, but the year after, it's like, oh, they didn't add anyone. It doesn't really matter because he's just that much better than everyone else in the league. And we even saw it last season where they affected the trajectory of the Western Conference by beating Denver and knocking them out of the 1 seed. And then the Nuggets obviously eventually lost. And that was pretty much just Wemby doing it single-handedly. I was thinking, Alex, about going crazy and taking them at 4. That's how excited I am about Wemby. They have a bunch of future picks to trade. I really like that they have Minnesota's pick in 2031 unprotected. I think they have a swap in 2030 with like a couple different teams. I think they have a Bulls pick too. They have the Hawks pick still. Like they just have a lot of maneuverability to go and get helpful pieces around him. So I'm really excited. There was one team, though, I had a spot ahead of them, and I am 100% not going to win this poll because I'm taking probably the 3 most hated teams by Knicks fans. And I'm going to take the Philadelphia 76ers with my next pick. I think they are a little bit similar to Milwaukee in that I think there's a pretty finite window here. Obviously, it's not like Joel Embiid's health is a fear heading into his 30s. It was horrifying in his 20s, and you almost don't want to think about what it's going to be heading into his 30s. But it kind of just takes one fully healthy postseason for him to be good enough and them to be good enough to make a run. I did unfortunately become a Tyrese Maxey fan in that series, like totally lovable. And like there were times he was matching Jalen Brunson play for play, shot for shot. I think there's a chance he's like a top 15 player in the league pretty early into this 5-year window. Paul George, again, like the tail end of that contract, not going to look great. The front end, I think he's still a really good, really useful player, particularly as the third option. And I love that they have an unprotected Clippers pick in, either 2027 or 2028. That could be a top 5 pick in the draft, and that could be a trade asset that could help them get a 4th star if like one of these guys starts to fall off or if they open room somewhere. But I have not loved everything Daryl Morey has done with this team. I thought he did a really good job this past summer putting this team together. But Marcus, how do you feel about those last 2? Was that roughly where you would have gone when me and Alex did?
Yeah, the Spurs were the other team that I was considering with that pick with the Bucks. I thought about Philly, but ultimately, like you said, Gavin, I think they're comparable like to Milwaukee in like the short-term title odds, and I just obviously like trust Giannis more than Embiid. So that broke that tie. And then in terms of Wemby, like obviously I believe in him. I think he's going to be great. I think he already is great. And I agree with what you said, Alex, about the Spurs kind of being the rare small market team that like has that kind of appeal and that kind of draw. I kind of just worry about what happens after Popovich inevitably like retires in a couple of years, because kind of like we've seen like with Duke losing Coach K or like the Patriots losing Belichick, like once those like figureheads kind of go away, it's a little bit like the movie ended, but the credits didn't roll, and we're just kind of like still watching, kind of the same world, but like something's missing. And I worry that like if the Spurs don't get to the playoffs and win a round or two in like that rookie contract and Popovich retires, like what happens if Wemby leaves? Like who's going to go to the Spurs after that? It just felt like a really big risk for a guy who I think is going to be great, but we haven't seen him, even in a play-in game yet. So I don't know. That's what ultimately led me to the Bucks. I did consider the Spurs though, and they probably would have been my pick if I had the one after mine. So don't hate that.
All right. I have one more here. So I am going to take, and I'm really happy because I think after 9, there's a pretty big drop off or decently sized drop off in terms of like going from teams that are either established now or have Wemby. That's essentially our top 8 or top 9 seemingly. I am going the Memphis Grizzlies. I think they are going to be really, really good in the present. If Ja Morant is not a fan of guns anymore, maybe that's a big if, but I'm counting on it. I love Desmond Bane. I think he's a killer. That's a bad choice of words. He's going to make some all-star teams down the road. Zach Edey, I actually really like the pick. Jaren Jackson, I think, is going to slot in really well playing power forward, which is, as that World Cup run showed, where he should always be playing, one of the best defensive players in the league. Brandon Clark, they draft as well or better than pretty much any organization in the league. Like they always kind of make the pick that like you look back a year later and say like, how is that guy at that spot? A lot of flexibility going forward. I like their present. I like their future. I don't think they have quite the higher end outcomes of some of these other teams, but I just think they're going to consistently be a 50-win team over this 5-year run, as long as Morant doesn't blow things up, which is questionable. Marcus, Alex, any thoughts there? Like good analogies on my part. What are we thinking?
I'll give you a quick rebut if you want, Marcus, before I get in. I'm breathing a sigh of relief though, because the team I wanted was not taken, so I'm good.
Nice. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, I'm just gonna hop right into it. I don't know that you could trust the Grizzlies to work out. Like for one thing, Morant's personal issues, but for two, his fragility. I mean, we already saw it kick in this preseason. Like he went out with, I saw notifications everywhere like Morant turns his ankle, he's headed back to the locker room, and then it was like, luckily he's okay.
It might have changed things, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
he got pegged with the ball, kind of like at his ankle on a pass.
I didn't even see what happened. All I saw was
it was like a bounce pass that happened to like hit his foot, and it just turned.
Yeah, all I saw was everybody was freaking out, and I'm like, well, here we are again. Like everybody freaking out about Ja Morant's health. Like he just plays too reckless. I think that's what it is. It's like a lot of what people used to say about Derrick Rose and whatever. It's just like he plays super hyper vertical and just throws his body out there and is trying to yam on everybody every minute of every game. And I think it's just catching up to him already early in his career. So but I also just don't feel like I could trust the dude to perform yet, because we just haven't really seen it. And maybe that makes me a hypocrite for the team I'm about to pick, but I have the Cavs. I had the Cavs pretty high up. Like I actually, I'm kind of capping a little bit here. I had the Cavs and then I had the Grizzlies, my next two teams. So it's not like it's that huge of a thing, but I'm happy to get the Cavs here because I really believe in them. I don't believe in them more than the Knicks or the Celtics or I mean, for the next 5 years, I think they've got a decent window. I think they did well by creating a good enough team that Donovan Mitchell felt comfortable re-upping there and establishing himself there and signing up for the next number of years with them. I think Darius Garland is still a question mark, but a good enough player that, like, much like what the Knicks just did with Randall, they could very easily just dangle Darius Garland as like the main piece of a trade to make something bigger happen. I think my only thing that I didn't really look up a ton before this that I'm scrambling to look at now is their draft pick situation. I mean, they have 2025 and 2026. All right, so their first round pick situation is not fantastic. I actually don't even know how this is possible. They apparently, it's swaps. It's a lot of swaps and stuff from the Mitchell trade that they're still dealing with, because the way it's framed here is just that they have no first round picks for like the next like 8 years. But no, I mean that situation's not great. But I think the guys that they have on the team, the malleability through the contracts and everything is big, and they have avenues to get better if they really set their mind to it. But I like the core. I think the core is pretty good, and as we've seen, like when the Pacers made an ECF run last year, all it takes is one team or a couple teams to get hurt in the way or whatever. And that happens in the postseason sometimes. And sometimes a team can just sort of become a team of destiny in that way. And I think the Cavs are fairly well equipped with like a good amount of depth and good talent to be a pretty top team for the next 5 years. So I feel pretty solid about this pick.
Yeah, I like it. I only had them a couple spots back just because I think them having any type of championship-esque ceiling is so contingent on Evan Mobley like becoming like a decent 3-point shooter, which could definitely happen. We just haven't seen a lot of evidence of it. And they've consistently been worse when all 4 of their stars are on the court, which maybe just tells you like, hey, they have those guys under team control. Like there'll be room for them to maneuver, room for them to retrofit it around Donovan Mitchell. I just don't like the fit right now. And like, I just question like what's the upside there. And I think there are a couple teams I had that haven't had quite as much success yet. But I think could be better down the road, but it's not my turn to pick them. It's Marcus's turn to pick. So Marcus, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was kind of in your same mindset, Gav, I was considering the Cavs, but I feel like they're kind of in that like 45 to 50 win range, like pretty solidly. Like I don't expect them to be above or below that. So I guess it just depends what you value in this exercise at this point in the draft anyway. I'm definitely taking the Orlando Magic. That's one of my two.
That was my next team.
For sure. That's a team that I can really see Knicks fans just despising if they have to play a playoff series against them, whether that's like a 2-7 or 3-6 or whatever this coming year. Like the Magic are just a team that are going to beat the crap out of you and play intense defense. The game's going to be like 84 to 79. And if they could just ever get a guard, I kind of thought there was a minute where Paul George was maybe going to go there. They just need like a little bit more perimeter scoring. Paolo and Franz are great. I just don't think either of them is really going to be a guy that is going to be setting up other people and creating from the perimeter. Like I kind of see Paolo as like, maybe he can be like a 30-point scorer, but I think kind of like a younger version of Tatum before he took more of this like facilitating leap. I kind of see him in that like 3 assist range right now, which is like not ideal for your best player. The guy who's going to have the ball in his hands all the time. Franz is maybe a little bit more of a facilitator, but I think he kind of is better off the ball. So they are like a piece away, but I feel like if they got that piece, if they got ironically Donovan Mitchell or like someone in that kind of like tier, I think they could really make a push and like be a second round team that maybe surprises somebody and can make a conference finals. So definitely going with the Magic. And then with my other pick, this is where I had considered the Cavs. I thought about the Rockets, but I just saw someone on Twitter. They had some kind of post about the Rockets where it was like 7 of their guys laid out next to each other and like, this is the future, this core. And someone quote tweeted it and was like, Jalen Green cannot be in the middle of your like young core picture. And I ultimately agree with that. I'm not picking the Rockets. I'm going to go with the Pelicans, who Gavin, you and I saw play 2 games. First and last season somehow in New Orleans. And obviously it's like a big bet on Zion, but I think beyond that, they just have a ton of depth and a ton of wing talent. McCollum is still fine. They don't really have a center, which is a little troubling. They lost Valanciunas, who was just fine anyway, but if they lean into maybe like a big Zion lineup, or if they can trade some of their wings, maybe Brandon Ingram to upgrade on the inside, or to get
Trey Murphy for Mitchell Robinson, perhaps.
DeJounte Murray, we'll see how he fits there. I just kind of think they have a ton of talent. And like, even if we haven't really seen it all gel at the same time, you know, because someone's always injured or Zion is like dealing with something off the court. Like, I still think that if it ever clicked, like at this point in the draft where we were at pick 13, like I think that the upside is high enough that I'm willing to take a chance on Zion maybe popping.
Yeah, I mean, I like both those picks. That was Orlando. I had 10. New Orleans, I had 13. I love the Pelicans wings. They just have too many of them right now, and the way they're building this is really weird. After I thought they were building it really, really well, so I'm curious to see how they like get off McCollum or get off Ingram. Like it's just a weird team, but you can't question the talent there. Alex, what are you thinking, and where are you leaning next?
Well, I'm a little disappointed. Is this the first time that one of my next best teams is not available to me, and I have to take a team that I don't want? The Magic and the Pelicans, I'm right there. I mean, I think that's just the right combination of, young team on the cusp with a lot of good talent already on board. Neither team has really done anything too crazy yet, like to completely deplete themselves in any way, in terms of assets and stuff. So they have avenues to get better if they decide to. I'm quite frankly surprised. I mean, I know the Pelicans just picked up Murray, but I'm honestly surprised they haven't tried to make a bigger splash yet. Like, and maybe they have, and they just haven't pulled it off. Maybe they're still in that like phase that the Knicks were in for a few years, where they're like, no, we're just waiting for the right one to make that deal for, and the absolute right time. But they have the ammo to do that whenever they want. So they were the team I had next, and then the Magic, I just think, have a lot of really good young talent and will only continue to get better, I think. So we'll see how it goes, which makes it really painful that I got to go by the book. I got to go what my list says here, and I got to pick this next team that I hate with so much of my being. But I'm going to take the Indiana Pacers next. I mean, there's no denying like whether I think the Knicks would have beaten them if fully healthy or not. Like they were an Eastern Conference Finals team last year, even if they just got absolutely walloped once they got there. Ultimately, they have two guys that are making max money in Halliburton and Siakam, and they're both making, actually, according to Basketball Reference, they're making identical, which is kind of crazy. So they're gonna both be making about 42 million this year, 45 to 46 million the next year, 49 million the year after that, and then 52 million the year after that. And then Halliburton gets an additional year of 55.5 million if these numbers are right on Basketball Reference. I guess the only thing is like I'm looking at it right now, and they don't seem like a team that's in huge danger of potentially having to become like a luxury tax team either, and especially not a second apron team, which is what's like the death knell for breaking up cores now. And the only way that happens is if Miles Turner just gets an obscene contract for his next deal, which I don't think is going to happen. So I think that they're in pretty good shape, as much as I hate to admit it. They have a good core. Halliburton, I don't necessarily buy. I think he's going to, he had his moments against the Knicks and whatever, but he seemed like kind of a playoff dropper against the Celtics. Granted, it was against a really good team, but I think if you could scheme for him properly, and I think the Knicks certainly could, and a lot of teams could, that you can stop him and thus stop the Pacers. But against the right teams and whatever, they're good. And, to get as my fifth pick in this draft, so as we're halfway through, I feel pretty solid about them in that spot.
Yeah, Alex, I'm joining you in getting sniped, because that was who I wanted next. I like their setup a lot. I think Jarace Walker is going to be a really interesting swing piece for them, and they've taken some like interesting bets on like athletic wings, and maybe if someone pops over the next few years. And they still have Benedict Mathurin, who no one really talks about because he was hurt for that whole playoff run. Like there's a chance that they could have a little bit of a higher ceiling than people think.
All right, in shame, I'm going to end this episode right there, right after choosing the disgusting Indiana Pacers. I'm so just disgusted with myself that we need to take a break. I need to go cleanse myself in a baptism of Patrick Ewing sweat or something, just to get that stink off of me. And then we're going to continue this draft tomorrow and finish up this episode. I think actually the back half of the draft was arguably more interesting than the beginning half, because there was so many harder decisions to make, I think, than in this one, where it was like, which good team do I pick? In the back half, it was like, what do I prioritize with this 5-year draft? I think there was some very differing philosophies and things of that nature that went into the final 16 picks that we made in this draft. So tune in tomorrow. We'll have that. But until then, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you all soon. Peace out, everybody.